Okay, hi guys. Aryan, can you mute? Well, thanks. Hi everyone. So today we'll sort of move out of pure Python and the built-in functions and the standard library and go to some other external packages which are very useful. The first of these being NumPy. So the reason we are doing this first is because NumPy is basically the base upon which the scientific Python ecosystem is built. It provides all these things that we've highlighted here: multi-dimensional array manipulation, which we will do quite a lot of in this lecture. Um, Elementary mathematical functions. You've seen this a bit in the math library in the previous lecture, as well as random number generation. But NumPy does more of this, gives more functionality. It gives you linear algebra routines, all sorts of stuff, set operations, input output, string manipulation. You know, so it's a very large package. Okay, it does all these things. It's extremely big. One piece of advice early on: don't try to remember all the functions that we do and we cover even in this lecture, not just NumPy, in one sitting. Um, NumPy is very much something that you learn over time. If you try to do everything at once, you will forget it because there is just that much. So what we should do is we should try to prioritize some specific concepts, which I'll highlight a few, and those will be much more useful. Um, and the list of functions, leave it to the NumPy documentation. You can look it up whenever you want. Again, you can Google, you can go to Stack Overflow and find out. So yeah, don't try to remember everything that happens in this lecture, but just the more important stuff. Okay, so I mentioned the scientific Python ecosystem. This is what it's like. You have Python at the bottom, and you have all these basic things. You've already seen Jupyter. IPython is sort of like the terminal. Jupyter is like the web browser compatible version of IPython. These things were made before NumPy, by the way. IPython, Matplotlib, and SciPy. So yeah, it's really fun to go up and read about the history and stuff. But um, what we'll cover in this course will mostly be NumPy, Matplotlib, pandas, for the most part. The rest of this, there's a lot of things to explore, and you can in fact take the opportunity to explore a few of these in your project as well if you wish. But yeah, I mean, there are lots of cool things that happen in and around the scientific computing sort of stack here. So this particular notebook was sort of adapted from a much less extensive version that was developed for tutorials conducted by Kritika. So if you are interested in using Python for astronomy, you can check out this repo that I've linked here. Some other very good external resources, um, Python from a data science point of view, is this Python Data Science Handbook by Jake Vanderplas. He is an extremely accomplished developer in Python. And there's an entire chapter on NumPy. You can, and I will in fact link to a few of the some major concepts to his book because he's explained it extremely well. Also using Jupyter notebooks and so on. It's more or less free. You can go and look this up. And you also have the NumPy documentation and reference. Again, don't read the entire thing in one sitting. Uh, so a bit of an overview, NumPy basics. I'll go a bit fast here. Not because it's there's a not because I want to go fast, but because a lot of the syntax for NumPy is very intuitive. It does pretty much what you expect it to do, and also it's in some ways it's similar to what we have from lists and tuples and so on. So I won't cover list slicing for one-dimensional arrays again. It's pretty much the same as it is for lists for NumPy arrays. Multi-dimensional NumPy arrays are a bit more new to you, and this is where we'll take it a bit slow. And the key takeaways from here is you should know how to slice a multi-dimensional array, and you should know what this axis keyword does in things. Once you have these two things, you can more or less go ahead with using NumPy for 2D or 3D arrays and stuff. And then at the end, we'll finish off with by doing exactly what I said you shouldn't do and going through the NumPy reference. to like find out like interesting functions. There's a lot of good stuff there. We'll also see how you can read a CSV using NumPy, which is much faster than doing it by string methods that you may have done in tutorial 1. Okay, so let's exit this and we'll go to the actual notebook itself. Should I zoom in a bit more? Yeah, I think I should. Is this fine? Is this visible?
Can you go back to the?
Yes.
Yeah,
Is this
this is nice.
all right? Cool. So the first thing we should do is let me just restart and clear all of them. Yeah. So the first thing that you do, just like with any package, is any library. You know, we've done this before with math and random and so on. You have to import it. Now, if you're using Anaconda, then NumPy is already installed for you. If you are not using Anaconda and you're using something else, you're just using the you downloaded Python from the website, or you're using Miniconda or something, you may have to pip install NumPy or Conda install NumPy, depending on what you're using. But if you have Anaconda, all of this is done for you, and you should just be able to run this cell. By the way, this notebook is available at the GitHub repository, that the same one as last time. So you can go there and download this if you want, or you can just follow up here. Okay, so this will import everything that we need. Now the next thing, we need to create an NumPy array. How do you create a list? You just put everything in square brackets, right? How do you create a NumPy array? Lots of ways to do it. The first one we will look at is just converting anything that is a sequence, like a list or a tuple or even a set, to a NumPy array. And you can do that using this np.array function here. So np.array converts this Python object into a NumPy array. And if you look up the documentation for this, np.array, that will be exactly what it says. So it will create an array, and you have to pass in an array, any object exposing the array interface, anything that it's a sequence or a nested sequence or whatever. So so yeah, let's just run this. You'll notice that there's another function here called asArray. For Python objects, it's pretty much the same as numpy.array, to be completely honest. But if you pass in an array into numpy.asArray, it doesn't return a new array. In fact, it just gives this as another name pointing to the same object, right? So remember, Python variables are just names. They are, they're names pointing to some object in some memory. So you can have multiple names pointing to the same object, and that's what asArray does. Which means that if you change this the array that you get using asArray, then the original array is changed, right? So that's why I've named this here. I've named this copy, because if you change this, nothing happens to array 1. Whereas with the ref thing, if you change the array to ref, the array 2 itself gets changed. So that's one difference between array and asArray. For the most part, we'll be using array. Um, so yeah, I mean, this is just something to keep in mind later on. So nothing important there. Important thing here, you can convert sequences to NumPy arrays using np.array. Why are NumPy arrays nice? You can do element-wise operations. Isn't this fun? So if you have a NumPy array of 1, 2, 3, 4, if you do x times 2, then this times 2 is done element-wise, which means you get 2, 4, 6, 8, right? If you don't do this with a NumPy array, if for example you do this with a list, then you basically just get the list again. So it does 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Whereas if you do this with a tuple, again the same thing, you get that. But with a NumPy array, it does element-wise operations, which is pretty nice, right? It's behaving like something that we would see in math, like a vector or something. But this can be done with lists as well. I mean, you can you can just write a for loop or a list comprehension, right? The difference is, and you may be seeing this for the first time, don't be alarmed, is just running this code many times and then looking at how much time each run takes. Okay, uh, so you can see that this NumPy element-wise operation is about 100 times faster than the for loop. Of course, you can also use map if you want to, really do it. But if you do that, it's again slower, because you have to convert this iterable to a list and so on. But what this does is that NumPy in the backend, everything, all these operations are defined in C, which means that things go very fast, right? One of the reasons it goes very fast is because all the data types, all the elements in NumPy array have the same data type. And we'll see that in just a moment. With a list, each list element can be anything, right? You can have one, you can have a list like this, right? And for these things, times 2 means something completely different for each of these elements. And for some of them, it may not even be defined. And so Python has to do this check in each for loop to see whether this is compatible. With NumPy, for example, this is just one reason, okay, among many. That check doesn't need to happen because you can just check if the data type of the entire array is compatible. But that obviously gives you a sort of restriction that you can't have a NumPy array with each element having a different data type, right? So this will just scale everything up to a character. And we'll see how we can change this. But I mean, all the elements have to be the same data type. You cannot have one element with a different data type in a NumPy array. Yeah, so these the actual values that you get will be different depending on the computer, but I mean, it's obviously clear that NumPy is much faster at all of this stuff. Another thing, um, it's not just element-wise operations that work; it's also element-wise indexing in a way. So if you have a NumPy array like this, so you remember range, right? We just saw it earlier. So range 0, 100, 1 basically gives you a list of numbers 0, 1, 2, 3 up to 99 included. Right? I don't want to scroll all the way down, so let's just do 10. Yeah? And np.arange gives you the same thing as a NumPy array. Right? So you get 0, 10, 1. You get this entire thing as a NumPy array. You get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 6 up to 9. Which is a very convenient thing that some of you might find later on. If you want to separate out these indices, right, the 27th element, the 7th element, the 17th element, and the first element in this order, right? So, for example, if we have X are the serial IDs of some students, and this is the ranking they have in some quiz or something like that, right? So, if you want to extract those out, then you can just do X of indices. Now, obviously, in this case, it's plain obvious that the index is the same as the roll number, but this can be anything, right? So it can be, for example, if this starts at 100 and goes to 200, right? Then you basically get the elements in these indexes. So yeah, I mean, that's another good thing that is there. You can't do this with a list. You can try, but it'll just give you a type error saying that list indices must be integers or slices and not a list. So this is another thing that makes NumPy very nice to use. You can index it with a list, right? Okay, so for now we've seen two ways in which they are different. NumPy arrays are different from lists and tuples, which is that you can have element-wise operations, and it's not just plus multiplication you can do. You can do exponentiation or modulo operations or anything. And we've also seen that you can index them with another list. Great. Okay, so now again, I mentioned that there are each NumPy array has a data type, right? It's not that each element has its own data type. Then NumPy array on its own has a data type. There are other attributes and methods that can be used to describe a NumPy array. You can read through this and go through the video a bit later. It's also there in the lecture notes, which will be released later. But basically, the point here is that if you have a multi-dimensional NumPy array, you can't have a ragged sequence, which means that it should be sort of like a matrix. So if you have 3 by 4, then there should be 3 rows and 4 columns. If you try to make it something like this, where there are 4 elements in the first row and only 3 in the second, then it will just give you a warning saying that yeah, I mean, this is don't do this. This is something that is not done, and this is the correct way to go about doing this stuff. So let's just look at a few of the attributes. Again, don't try to remember everything at once, but you can sort of see that the data type for this array is an integer. 64 means that it's allocating 64 bytes in memory, which is significantly higher than what you might be used to if you're coming from C++. Um, x.endim is basically saying that the number of dimensions for this array is 2, which is what we expect. I mean, this is a 2-dimensional array, right? If you want, you can think of this as similar to a matrix, which is often not a good way of thinking about it, but because if you multiply two arrays like this, you get element by element multiplication, not a matrix multiplication. But if you want to think about it that way, and it's useful for you to understand that, yeah, pretty much like a matrix. So you can also have a shape. This has 3 rows and 4 columns, and it has a total of 12 elements in it. So now I mentioned before that you can change the data type, and you can also change the shape of the array. It doesn't make much sense to change the size, because how can you do that, right? If you have an array like this, you can change the shape. So you can say, instead of having 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12, I want to have 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 in threes instead. That is doable. You can have 6 by 2 2 by 6, all sorts of things. But it doesn't make sense to say that suddenly I want only 11 out of those. For that, you'll have to make an entirely new array. So the way you can change the data type and the shape is using these two functions, asType and reshape. Again, you may not find this absolutely necessary in the beginning, so I'll show this to you. Then after that, you're supposed to go ahead and forget about it. Okay. So you can change, you can do x.asType float, and it'll return a new NumPy array which has a data type um, of float. So you can see that now there is a floating point here, and if you do y.dtype, you basically get float 64. Okay. Now you can do this, or you can equivalently just do numpy.float64. Note that this float64 is not a Python data type, right? It's a data type defined within NumPy. That's why you can do np.float64, and it'll basically give you the same thing. You can go up to 128, right? So that's fun. I don't think it's supported beyond that, but you can also use this sort of string version if you want. If you want to convert this into a string, you can do this, and you will get each element as a string. Pretty fun. You can also reshape. So currently the shape is 3, 4. Let's have a look at x. So it looks like this. If we reshape it, then it will get reshaped into this. So it will have 2 rows and 6 columns. And it basically gets reshaped almost exactly as you would expect it to. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12. Okay. So yeah, I mean, this is more about building familiarity with NumPy. It takes a while. It takes practice for you to be comfortable with this, but just know that these are things that can be done. Okay. Just as a side note, you can index multi-dimensional arrays with using this. So this is sort of like a coordinate that you can use to find out the element. So 1, 2 gives you the second row and the third column. Second row and the third column is 7. Okay. We'll come back to indexing multi-dimensional arrays in a while after the first break. But yeah, just keep it in mind that you can just use this separated by a comma. So I mentioned array operations. We have element-wise operations. You can also have element-wise operations between arrays of the same shape, which means that if you had x like you did earlier, right? If you do x times x, if this was a matrix, then you would expect, oh, this is not going to work, because a matrix requires that these two numbers, the second number here, the first number here, they should be the same, right? Because that's how matrix multiplication works. But I just said that these are element-wise operations, so they have to be the same shape, and you basically get exactly what you expect. If you do x squared like this, then you basically get the same thing again. If you want to do proper matrix multiplication, you can convert the NumPy arrays to a matrix or use np dot dot. Notice that this will not make any sense right? It will give you a value error saying that 3 comma 4 and 3 comma 4 are not aligned, which means that which basically means that this does not define matrix multiplication. So if you take the transpose of this, for example, then it would work, right? So the way to take a transpose, you can either do a dot capital T, or you can do np dot transpose, and this will give you the matrix multiplication. So I'll put a transpose here. I'll give you the same thing. So you can use np dot dot, or you can convert it into a matrix. Usually you might find that this is easier for you to do. And till now, notice that we haven't introduced anything new per se, right? All of these things were defined, these multiplication, exponentiation, they're basically there for normal numbers in Python. It's just that NumPy allows you to do this with arrays as well in an element-wise order. And of course, you can expect that the same will hold for relational operators and logical operators as well. So if you have x greater than 5, this will basically return an array where each element is a bool. So it's either true or false. So if you remember what x was, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the first row and the first column on the second row should be false, and everything else should be true, and that's basically what you get. Great. And if we change up x, let's go back to one-dimensional arrays again, right? So remember, arange behaves similar to the way the range function does, except it returns a numpy array, right? So you get 0 to 9, and x less than 6. You can see that the first sort of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? Elements should be true, and everything else should be false. And for x greater than 3, first 4 should be false, and everything else is true. Now, if it's like there weren't enough ways to index an array, you can do even more, right? You can use an array of d-type bool and the same shape like this to index an array, and this works exactly how you would expect it to. So if you do x greater than 3, right, or something like this, what would you expect? So you would be indexing it with an array that says false, 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 and then true everywhere else. So it will give you wherever the value is true, it will return the value, the element there. So it will give 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Great, right? And this is wonderful. So if you do something like this, and remember, if you just type y equal to x, it doesn't make a new array, it adds a reference to it. Okay, so let's do this in different cells. So again, y greater than 5, first 5 will be false. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, sorry, first 6 will be false, and then the rest will be true. And if we set them to 0, you might sort of expect, if you are doing this with a list, right, that you would just get 0. No, what happens here is that this goes element wise. So all the elements that were returned here get made into 0. All right. So this sort of reads exactly like you would read mathematically. So where y greater than 5 equals 0, and that's what happens inside the array. Okay, so it's a very intuitive API. There's nothing really to be scared about. It just takes some getting used to. So, and now that you've seen it, it shouldn't take too long for you to sort of get used to it. Okay, great. Moving on. You can also obviously do very complicated stuff like this. Yeah, whatever. This can be any conditional, any relational operation inside anything that gives you an array of the same shape with d-type bool. Okay, so there's one thing that we haven't covered from Python, the basic Python lecture from lecture 1, and that is the and, or, and not. You can simply use the bitwise operators, and that will do everything for you. So if we do x, and remember x is a range 10, so 0 up to 9, x less than 6 and x greater than 3, this should give you 4, 5. And indeed it does. X less than 2 and x greater than 7. Or x greater than 7. So it should give you 0, 1, 8, 9. Right? Great. and x where not x equals 5. This is the logical, the bitwise not operator. So x equal 5 will give you true only where x equal 5. Not that will give you true wherever x is not equal to 5. So you basically get an array where without the without the element 5 here. Okay, so let's take a break here for 5 minutes. I'll take some questions from Slido if they are there. Just a bit of a summary. We can create numpy arrays from sequences using np.array. Operations work element wise, array scalar and array of the same shape. Right? We saw that. We saw you can do x times 2. You can also do x times x, right? Or anything like that. Arithmetic operations, relation operations, bitwise logical operators. All of these things work. There are a few array attributes which are really important: d-type, number of dimensions, shape, and size. And so far, you can index a numpy array with an integer. We've seen this. This is normal. Integer and slices are, you've seen that for lists as well. You can do it with a list of integers, right, which was something new. And you can also do it with another numpy array of the same shape with data type bool, which we saw here. And this expects exactly like we would, we would think. Okay, so let's take a small break here. Let me come back and okay. Any questions? There's an audio issue in YouTube. I hope that is fixed.
The audio issue has been fixed, and there are no questions, just a lot of love for your teaching.
Oh,
And there was one particular thing that there is a link in the chat for whoever wants to try out the IPython notebook.
yes. Yeah. Yeah, feel free to go ahead. Yeah, and in fact, we'll the next part will sort of involve you guys as well. So you'll have to go ahead and try out running some cells because that's really the only way you can learn how to do all this indexing and slicing. It's to do it on your own. Yeah. So feel free to go ahead and download it and try it out now.
Yeah, we are giving you a couple of minutes more. By when are you starting again?
Um, let's say 2 more minutes.
Okay, guys, download it, try it out. What should I download? There is something called the link for IPython notebook, right?
Yeah. Actually, just sort of demonstrate.
Yeah, just show them this. Just
Yeah, if you
directly
just
download
open
this.
this, yeah, you can just directly just
Yeah.
download this and save it somewhere.
Control
Uh,
S and you
yeah,
save it the way he's doing it on the screen.
yeah. So you can go to a lot of stuff here. Yeah, so you can go here, you can save it. Um,
His file structure is a mess, but what he's doing is he's just opening the link,
yeah,
doing Control S, saving that wherever he wants, and opening it in his Jupyter notebook. That's what he did on the screen. Okay,
yeah, you can do that.
maybe we can wait 20 till 22:37. How's that?
Cool. Yeah. So go ahead, download it, try it out, get till this, the first break.
Vedant,
Yeah.
just a minute. I have an announcement. Two actually. So whoever freshers, I guess this is for everyone. Okay. So what we are going to do now is next week we have lecture 7 and 8. Now you remember that we sent out a schedule in the beginning which said Monday and Thursday. Now we are aware that the freshers have a end semesters coming up and it's like right after that weekend. Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to make the lectures on Monday and Tuesday. Okay, next week only we are going to have a Tuesday lecture, which is uh, Tuesday the 15th. Okay, we will not have any lecture on Thursday the 17th. We'll have a lecture on Tuesday the 15th. And second announcement that I wanted to make about the project. Okay, so we are aware that you have 1 week of end sems. So what we are thinking about is we uh, just a minute about the tutor also I'll talk. So we are aware that your end sems are coming, and so what we'll do instead is we'll give we'll put the same deadline. If you have a problem like say end semesters, you can submit later. Okay, you can submit up to a week later, but you're going to have to put this somewhere, say in your abstract. Okay, so in your abstract just add a comment that we'll add a space for comments where you can say that we have end semesters, please give us a 1 week extension. Okay, and about the tutorial, the coming Saturday we have a tutorial 3, which is going to be the same content as tutorial 2 because you guys have not been able to attempt tutorial 2. And for tutorial 4, we will not have it right before your end semesters. We will have it right after your end semesters, and that too around say 2 or 3 days after your end semesters end. Okay. So we are doing this because we expect you guys to complete the tutorial, at least completely attempted before coming. Okay. So we have done all of these things just so that you can do the course properly. Right. Please stick to the deadlines. We are giving a 1 week extension. That's more than most people would give because it really overflows into the next semester. Okay, so please try to stick to the deadlines. Yeah, and Tuesday lecture next week, don't forget. Anyway, over to you, Vedant.
Yeah, all right. So let's carry on. Um, so we just saw that you can index a numpy array with these Boolean arrays, right? So these kinds of arrays. But for some reason in your code, you want instead of the values, you want all the indices where some condition is satisfied. So one thing you can do is you can use numpy.where. How do you do this? So if you have x which is a numpy array like this, so you'll notice that I just without any imagination just went 0 up to 7 and then put 0.5 and 0.6. So indices equal np.where x less than 5. So this should return say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so 8 and 9, right? And if we look at indices, that's exactly what we get. You get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 and 9. Except that's not it. Indices is not a numpy array, right? And that, you can see that because there's these brackets here that weren't there earlier. And in fact, if you try to type, you will see that indices is in fact a tuple. And the reason for this is that indices returns a numpy array for each dimension that the array has, right? So it's basically saying if you had another dimension, which we'll see later, you will get another array in this. So you'll have a tuple with 2 elements. Okay. And if you do x of indices, it behaves the same way as you would expect. So even if you give a tuple like this, it you know you get the array as you expected earlier. Also note one thing, these were all integers, but these are floats. And when you put them all into the numpy array, NumPy automatically converts the integers into floats. Okay. So that type conversion is sort of similar to what you would expect in C++ as well. So now what if you have a two-dimensional array, right? So one dimension, everything expects just as you imagine it to. If you have a two-dimensional array and you get indices equal np.where x greater than 5, what do you expect? So in fact, let's just look at this and we'll see um, what it should be like. So earlier we saw that the index, it just returns the index where the condition is true, right? So where is this condition true? It's true at 1 comma 2. It is also true at 1 comma 3. It's true at 1 comma, sorry, 1 comma 1, 2 and 3. So this is 6, this is 7 and this is 8. Okay, so 1 comma 1 is 6, 1 comma 2 is 7, 1 comma 3 is 8. Then it's also true at 2 comma 0 all the way up to uh, 2 comma 3. Okay, 2 comma 3 is 12. This is 9. So what do you expect indices to be? Like I mentioned earlier, it returns it returns a NumPy array. It returns a tuple which has NumPy arrays, as many NumPy arrays as there are dimensions in the array. There are 2 dimensions here, which is what you expect. So it returns 2 NumPy arrays. The NumPy arrays will be 1, 1, 1, and then 4 2s, and then 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. Right? That's sort of what we expect. Let's see if let's see if that is what we get. This instead of markdown, I'll put it as raw. Okay, great. So yes, that's what we get. So you get 1, 1, 1, and then 4 2s, and you get 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3. Right? So you get these two, the list of these indices as two separate arrays. And if you try to index x with this, now obviously there is no way to keep the structure of the array anymore, right? You can only get the elements. So it basically flattens out the entire thing and returns a one-dimensional array. It returns an array of the elements, um, instead of another um, two-dimensional array or whatever. Because just think about it, there's no logical way of making sure that this happens every single time. And in this case, everything was ascending. So okay, sure, you can come up with something, but if that were not the case and you just have some random true and false here and there, then there's no real way of keeping that two-dimensional structure. Okay, but of course, like earlier, if you just do x greater than 5, this will return a two-dimensional array um, which is has a data type of boolean. And if you do x where x greater than 5 here, you'll basically get the same thing that you get with x of indices. Okay, so depending on how you sort of want to use it, you can just directly use this, or you can use numpy.where if you want those indices as well. Now this seems very reasonable and this seems very nice and so on, but this sort of statement, so x where x greater than 5, so indexing it with boolean or a relational operator like this, or a boolean statement or whatever, any conditional, it also shows up quite a lot in pandas and other all those other packages that you saw built on top of Python and NumPy, right, in that image that you saw earlier. uh, for those of you who came late, I'm talking about this image. So a lot of the API or the syntax of NumPy is also inherited by pandas and also other machine learning packages like scikit-learn, TensorFlow, and so on. I personally haven't used it, but a lot. But yeah, there's a lot of common things that happen there. And in fact, in PyCon this year, PyCon is a Python conference that happens. So the 2021 PyCon US just ended like a few weeks ago, and the YouTube videos of those talks are being uploaded on YouTube just a few days ago, very recently. So if you go to their YouTube channel, you can actually find a talk where they discuss this exact thing, how the NumPy API has been sort of compatible from NumPy all the way up to all the other very specialized packages. So that's how important this is. I mean, it's not that you should know that numpy.where works or that numpy.where exists. You should just be familiar with this sort of working, and it'll be helpful quite a lot in the future. Okay, So, so this is now a new way of indexing it, right? You can index it with a tuple which has as many arrays as there are dimensions of the NumPy array, which is another way of indexing a NumPy array. Great. Is there anything else? Yes, there is slicing. And I said we'll come back to this later. So slicing in a multi-dimensional array. So if you do, of course, if you have a normal, let's have a normal example here also. So range 1 comma 13 will give you the same elements. Okay, so y of this, so this will give you all the elements in this thing. Okay, and if you set it to 1, something nice happens. What happens? Y becomes entirely 1. So this, when you slice a NumPy array, it doesn't return a different a different instance. It just returns a view of that array, and you can change the elements in the array. You can't do this with a list, for example. Just try to the list on your own Jupyter notebook. But anyways, that digression aside, if you do this, then you start from the beginning, go until the end, take every second element. So this will give you 1, 3, 5, all the odd numbers basically. Okay. Now, a similar sort of thing exists here, except that now instead of looking at this element wise, you have to think of it sort of as a row and a column sort of thing. So if you do x colon comma colon, this will give you every row and every column. Okay. If you do 1 like this, 1 colon comma everything, so this will give you all the rows starting from 1 and every column. So this will give you 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, and instead if you give -1 like this, it will go up till the last, excluding the last row. So it will exclude that last row there. And if you do something like this, then this will take every second row starting from the first one, right? So it will give you 1, 2, 3, 4. It will skip the second row. Then it will give you the third row, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, and till now we've been keeping this columns sort of constant. We can change that as well. So we can do this. So this will give you, it will start from the second column onwards. And if you do -1 like this, it will exclude the last column. So this is, it's pretty much the same as what you would expect in normal list slicing, except now we are sort of dealing with rows and columns instead of just the elements here, but pretty straightforward, right? So if you take colon colon 2, this will give you every column. So this will give you every row and every column, sort of like every second column, right? So it will give you 159, 3711. Great. Now let's combine these two things. So if you do something like this, what you should get is every second row and every second column. So this will eliminate this row completely, and these columns. So 2, 6, 10, and 4, 8, 12. So it should give you 1, 3, 9, 11. Great. So that's sort of how slicing works. You can do it for each column. If you have more elements here, you can do more complicated things. But for now, let's just stick with this. Heads up, there's a question in the safe quiz about this. So yeah, just understand this. If obviously, as Shubham mentioned in the previous lecture, you can just copy the question onto your Jupyter notebook and run it. But try not to, because one, this is ungraded. So we just want to check whether you have got it or not. So it's a very good check for you to predict what the answer would be and then check if you were right and so on. So make an effort. Don't just copy this. So all the questions in the safe quiz are like are of a similar nature like this. So you have to understand how the slicing works, how the reshape works, and so on. All right, moving on from that. Given that we can use integers and we can also use slices separated by a comma, you would be tempted into thinking that we can use integers, a list of integers, because that's the first thing that we found out about NumPy arrays is different from list, right? Can you do that with sort of sorry, can you do that with multi-dimensional arrays where you can pass a list of integers separated by a comma, two lists of integers? So let's try that. So let's 0, comma 1, right? So this will select the first two rows. This will select the third row and the fourth row. Okay, so x of int1 comma int2. Okay, now this seems to, okay, what is this, what's happening here, right? It doesn't expect like you wanted it to. It doesn't work. What did you expect it to do? You sort of wanted 0, comma 2, 1, comma 3. What it gave you was oh yeah, it did give you 0, comma 2, comma 1, comma 3. Sorry. Oh, it was this example that I want to show. So, yeah, so you can index like this, but you cannot index with two Boolean arrays. Now, because if you try that, you get a shape mismatch. You can do with this with one slice, for example, and you will get exactly what you would expect. So everything up to the, so this gives every second row, and this will select the columns. So this is true, false, true, true. Let's try this on NumPy array. I haven't tried this myself. Okay, let's hope, but no. See, so for this, unfortunately, turns out can't really do it like this. I'm pretty sure there is some hack to this and there's some way of doing it. And if I find it, I will let you know. If you find it, please let us know. You can put it in the chat or like maybe in the doubts channel or something. But yeah, for here you'll have to use you'll have to at least have one as a slice. All right, great. So before we move on to this delete business, let's just try to understand what we can do with NumPy array. So there is this thing called sum, np.sum, which lets you surprise take the sum of all the elements in an array, right? So this is basically summing up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 without worrying about what the shape is and so on. So what if you wanted to do this sort of row wise or element wise, sorry, row wise or column wise, right? So this just takes the sum of all the elements in the array, disregarding any characteristics of the shape or whatever. So that's why you need to use this axis keyword. um, let's just do x dot shape here to demonstrate. So if I put axis equals 0, it will sum over the first axis. So it will sum over this, and what you get behind after that will be the other axis. So it will sum over all the rows. So it will sum 1 plus 5 plus 9 will give you 15, 2 plus 6 plus 10 which will give you 18, and so on and so on. Okay, so if you do this, 15, 18, 21, 24. If you do axis equals 1, it will sum over all the columns, right? So this value will disappear, and what will be left behind will be an array of shape 3, and that will basically be 10, what is this, 26, I think. Yeah, 26 and 42. Okay, so that's what this axis keyword does. For a two-dimensional array, axis 0 is along the rows and axis 1 is along the columns. If you have multiple, but I mean, obviously this only works when you think about two-dimensional arrays. If you have multiple dimensions, then it's easier to think about this shape and one of these things disappearing or whatever, right? And in particular, when you have images, images are color images are typically three-dimensional arrays, right? So you'll have a shape of something like 1920 comma 1080, which is like a screen resolution, comma 3, and those that 3 refers to each of the color channels, RGB. If there is a transparency channel, then you will get a 4 there as well. So in those kinds of cases, when you have more than 2 dimensions, it's often useful to think about it in terms of this shape instead of just thinking about rows and columns. And of course, at any point you can just try it out. Jupyter allows you to do this. You can tinker around and figure out what everything actually does. So given this argument called axis, let's try and go back and see how we can use delete. So x, let's start with a one-dimensional example. So X is np.arange, say 12. Okay, yeah, why not? Indices equal np.where x less than 5. Okay, so these indices will be say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you want to delete them from the array, you can use np.delete x comma indices. Okay, and again, if you ever want to look at the documentation for this, put a question mark and run that cell, and it'll give you the documentation like this. So it'll return a new array with the subarrays along an axis deleted, which is absolutely sort of useless unless you see an example. Okay, so uh, so if you delete this, you'll basically get everything else. Okay, it'll delete all the elements at the indices. Note that it doesn't delete it from the original array. It just returns a new array. Okay, if you do x equal to this, then you have replaced the array, but it's not doing it in place. So this is pretty straightforward, right? I mean, one dimensional case is always straightforward. 2 dimensions is where it starts to become fun. So let's go back and define x as it used to be, this thing. Okay, and where will it go? Here. I will remove these cells so that it becomes a bit clearer. So x is 1, 2, 3, 4 like this up to 12. Indices is x where yeah, so let's take this apart step by step. There's a lot of stuff happening here. X where all the rows and the first column, so this will give you 159, is greater than 1. So this will give you false true true, right? And indices of where the array is false, of this false true true array, will give you 1 and 2. Okay, now if you tell numpy I want you to delete uh, from x these indices along this axis, so axis equals 0, remember, x dot shape, axis equals 0 is this 3, so it's the number of rows, so it will delete the last 2 rows of this numpy array and return everything else. So it will return the first row. Okay, but you can also say I want you to delete it along axis 1, which means that it will delete the middle 2 columns, and what you will get here will be 159, 4, 8, 12. Now I can't be sure of where this has a particular use case, right? In general, I'm not sure. It's just that you can do it. Okay, this is obviously much more common if you ever want to do something like this. So for example, if 159 are like scores on a test, okay, and you want to isolate somebody who failed, right? And let's say the passing mark is just is 1. So wherever it is greater than 1, you isolate those things and those rows, and then you just delete them to get the data for that student who has failed, for example. And this 2, 3, 4 can be other marks or whatever in general. Um, but this is one way where you can sort of a very rudimentary way of cleaning your data, right? There are obviously much better ways of doing it. Pandas, of course, is one of them. But you can definitely do it with just a multi-dimensional array in NumPy. So although it does make your code slightly less readable, but this can be done, and it might be useful in certain scenarios for you. Okay, so that brings me to the next break, and yeah, summary again. We've gone through quite a lot now. We have now seen more ways of indexing an array. We have seen um, this thing in particular, the numpy.where thing, which returns a flattened array. We have seen that we can use a slice for each dimension separated by a comma. We can use a list of integers for each dimension separated by a comma, 2 lists of integers or 3 lists or whatever, how many dimensions you have. We tried to use Boolean arrays, but that didn't work quite as well. Although we could get, we could use a list, a Boolean array in one index and a slice in another. So that worked pretty well. So yeah, I'll stop here again for questions if there are any. Um,
Vedant,
yes.
can you go over Axis once? I think
All
people
right.
have a doubt in that.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I expected this. So let's go through axis with sum again. So let's go back and look at x. So how can you sum up elements here, right? So one obvious way is you can sum up everything, all the elements, and you can get whatever. What was it? X dot sum 78. Okay, so you can just do np dot sum x or x dot sum. Both of them work, and you can get the elements, the sum of all the elements in it. But suppose you want the sum of all the elements row wise, right? So for each row, you want to know what the sum of the elements in the row is, right? So you want to, um, again, let's go back here. So you want to do np dot sum x along all the rows, which means that you want to sum up 1, 2, 3, 4, you want to sum up 5, 6, 7, 8. Oh, sorry, this means column. So if you do np.sum x comma axis equals 1, what it will do is it will sum over all of these axes. It will sum over all the elements in this particular dimension. Okay, if you get that. So this second one is the column. So it will sum over all the elements in the column here. So it will sum 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, which will give you 10. 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 will give you 26, and the last row will give you 42 or something. Okay. And that's basically what it is. It's just summing over the columns, and this one sums over the rows. Um, if you if you're from a physics background, it's easier for me to explain because there are things called Einstein summation and so on, which I think a lot of people also do in their first year. But the basic thing is sort of similar to that. You want to either sum over each row or you want to sum over each column. So summing over the columns is like this. This is how I define it. So summing over the column, you will take each row and then sum all the elements in each column. Right. So you can call it a row wise sum or a column wise sum or whatever you want. But if you want to do any operation like that, it need not be sum. You can do you can take the mean or the median or whatever. If you want to do anything like that, then the axis keyword here is for you to use. Yeah, I'd suggest sort of playing around with this. You have the code right now with you to sort of see how it happens. You can do it with different things. So if you have x dot t, which gives you the transpose, right? That gives you something else to play around with. So if you do np dot sum x dot t axis equals 0, then what do you expect, right? So let's just do x dot t dot shape, which will just be these things interchanged. Okay, it will be 4, 3. So if you sum over axis equal to 0, what you will get eventually is a numpy array with the shape of the remaining axis. So it will remove this axis, it will sum over this axis. Okay. So it will sum over all of these things. So it will do 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4. So it will basically return the same thing. It will give you 10, 26, 42. Okay. So yeah, I mean, play around with it. This is something you have to sort of be comfortable with. You won't immediately get used to it as such, but you know, after a while you sort of become familiar with it. So that's the sort of thing that it works. So yeah, just try out a few examples. There are a few examples in the safe quiz as well. Try to reason it out. So I've given you one way of doing it. If you do anything over some axis, then just imagine that axis disappearing, and the final result will have the shape of the remaining the remaining axis here. So that's one way of thinking about it. Okay. So yeah, I think we can stop here. We'll try the safe quiz. If there's any sort of doubts that you have after the safe quiz, because these questions come up there, then we can discuss them again there as well. Shall we get started with the safe quiz then?
Feels like there aren't any doubts.
Okay.
Uh, just a minute. I'll try running the safe quiz. Yeah. Okay, pyck.tz is the quiz. We'll give you the password in a second. Please download the quiz. Okay. Okay, password is in the chat. Vedant, I can dictate it if you'd like.
Sorry, I was muted. Can you put it on chat? I'll just copy paste it. Be easier that way.
Yeah, I put it on chat. It's QGD
Got
JKB.
it. Got it. Actually, I don't have to zoom in like this. I can just use rights. There. Now I have it colored
Guys,
as.
please attempt it. Yes, we've nicely formatted it for you. It's in 10 minutes, it's going to end.
So there are really only 3 questions about NumPy. Everything else is just asking you whether you've started up on your project and so on. So I think we'll start sort of moving on in 5 minutes or so. So please attempt it now. Yeah. Should we move on now? There's about 20 minutes left, so we should start as fast as possible.
We can wait for like 3 minutes maybe, because I mean, people are just attempting it.
Okay. Okay. Have submissions started coming in?
Yeah, they have started coming in, so I feel like that's not a problem. They're just taking a bit
Okay.
of time.
All right. All right. Cool. Cool.
Yeah.
Vedant, I guess we can resume now.
All right. Great. So let's move on. So yeah, the rest of this part of the lecture is mostly just showing you some cool stuff. So we saw earlier that you can do element-wise operations and stuff like that with arrays of the same shape. NumPy, the real power of NumPy is in something called broadcasting, um, and this is pretty magical. It allows you to do these sort of array operations for these element-wise operations for arrays which are not of the same shape. Let's just look at this for example. So if you have x and y which are like this, so uh, let's make this look prettier. Okay, great. So if you have x which is 0, 1, 2, y which is 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, if you do y plus x, you wouldn't expect this to work because, I mean, why would it work, right? But logically, it makes sense to do something, and that is to add 0, 1, 2 to every row. Okay. And in fact, NumPy does that and it goes ahead and just adds 0, 1, 2 to every single row here like this. Now, as you can imagine, you could have just added 0, 1, 2 to the columns. And if you do a reshape, um, 3, this is, yeah, 3 comma 1. That is in fact what happens. So there are a lot of rules for broadcasting, and they are seen here. The easiest way to go and understand this is on this the book that I mentioned before, Python Data Science Handbook. So it gives you pretty good examples of broadcasting. It gives you like visual descriptions of what exactly is happening. It gives you the rules of broadcasting. There are these 3 rules, and each example sort of makes it clear how the rules define everything. And so you can just go ahead and read through this. This is a pretty good read. Everything you explained pretty nicely. So we won't go into too much detail on this here, but this is something that exists. You should know about it and leverage it whenever you can. Okay, some other miscellaneous methods that we didn't really talk about earlier before we go into the different libraries and functions. So x.shape, you all know is 3 comma 4. Now that you've tried, we know what access is and so on. We've tried np.sum x access equals 0 whatever. So this will give you this 15, 18, 21, 24 thing. You can also, instead of this you can just do x.sum. And instead of putting access equals 0, you can just put 0 and it'll give you the same thing. Okay. So it's available as a method as well. You can also get the mean, the standard deviation, the minimum, the maximum, all sorts of stuff. You can also get the index at which there is the maximum element of x. So this will be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So maximum value is at index 8 and the minimum value will be at index 9. Oh wait, 0, 1, 2, I think I didn't count this properly. Anyways, yeah, 5 is missing here. So it's 7 and 8. Great. Yeah, obviously the shape is 9, so you can't have an index 9. So it is 7 and 8. So yeah, I mean, these are just a few things that are there. You can get a big list of all of these things in the NumPy reference. A few more things to keep in mind, which we will do when we consider math. So I've linked everything here. So this is basically, it redirects to the NumPy reference for math. And you can see a lot of very familiar things. You've already seen this in the math library in the built-in, in the standard library, sorry. So you get sine, cos, tan, except that all of these things operate on the NumPy array instead of just one number. Okay, you also have arctan2, hypot, which may or may not have seen, which just gives you the hypotenuse of a right angle triangle given the legs. So it gives you x square plus x1 square plus x2 square under 2. Right? And then you have this degree to radian and radian to degree sort of thing. You have the hyperbolic functions. You can do round. So this is pretty useful. You can do floor and you can do ceil. So it implements those two functions. If you don't know what they are, floor gives you the largest integer less than or equal to the number, and ceil gives you the smallest integer greater than or equal to the number. Okay, and all sorts of things. You can see summation here. So one thing to note is that NumPy has a few very special things. One is np.nan. Nan is not a number, and it's a very commonly used sort of missing value sort of placeholder. Right? So if you have something like this, 4, 5, right? So 4 is missing, but note that, yeah, so it has to be of type float. So 4 here is missing. So if you want to take the mean here, right, it'll just tell you, or if you want to take the sum, let's start with sum, then it'll just tell you nan, because if you add a number to something that's not a number, the internal the way that Python handles it, and in fact this is not the way that Python handles it, it is something that is accepted as a standard across many languages and many operating systems, in fact, is to return a nan. If you want Python to sort of ignore the nan and sum up all the non-nan elements, non-nan is a weird way of saying not a number. So if you want NumPy to sum up all the numbers in the NumPy array, then you can use this thing called nan sum, which will give you what you expect. So it will give you 11. Okay, so so yeah, that's what you can see here. You can get nan sum, you can get nan product. So if you want to get the product of everything, you can do that as well. Nan product, right? So obviously this will be 0 because there is a 0 here, but if you remove this, then you get everything like this. Great. So that's this. As you can imagine, this gives you a very bad way of defining the factorial. So you can do np.product, np.arrange 1, what's it, 3, right? And this will give you 2 factorial. So lambda x np.prod x plus 1, right? So if you do this here, so here is a very bad way of doing factorial because it stores an array, right, of size n factorial. size n, sorry, and then it takes the product. Okay, so if you want to use something like that, then you can also obviously always use np.math.factorial, which will give you the same thing. Okay, but obviously made by people who have sense and know what they're doing. So yeah, there's a lot of other math stuff that you can do here. If you ever done numerical integration, you would have seen the trapezoidal rule. You can implement that. That is implemented in NumPy. You don't have to do anything really. You can just use that function there. A lots of other stuff. You get LCM, you get the GCD. If you remember if you've gone through the second tutorial, sorry, the fractions question, then you would have seen places where GCD was used. That's also available through NumPy for all these things. Lots of stuff there. So because you've already seen the math library, I'm not going to go into that in too much detail. Random also gives you similar thing, except that there's a lot of stuff telling you how you should be using random and so on. So you can read through this if you want, but basically you can still just use np.random.random, and this will sort of emulate exactly what random.random does. Right. So if you look up the documentation, it will return random floats in the half open interval 0 to 1. Okay. So sorry. Right. So this, if you pass it 12, it will return something with an array with 12 of these random numbers. If you pass something like 2, 3, it will give you an array with shape 2, 3. So what you are passing here is basically the shape of the array that you want at the end. And you can do all sorts of other stuff. So you can do rand n, which will give you sample from the normal distribution. Okay. Okay. Sorry. Yes. Yeah. So this you have to give the number like this. So yeah, again, you've seen the random library before. I won't go to it in too much detail. If you want, you can check out this. It tells you the newest way of doing this random generation. It gives you an example here. So what I showed you was sort of the old legacy version. The new version, which is much a better implementation, if you understand how random numbers are generated, pseudo random numbers, I should say, then then this is a better way of doing it. So so you can read through that at your own convenience. What I really wanted to show you is input output. So you've already seen CSV files. I mean, let me in fact go to the first. So this participants.csv, that was here, lecture 5. So if we do participants.csv, we can basically see there's a lot of names plus some email ID, right? Now suppose we wanted to open this. We already know how to do that. We use with open participants whatever csv.f, all the lines, everything, text is equal to f.read or whatever, right? And then you'll have to do stuff like, yeah, you'd have to do f.split /n. You'll have to do a strip first, and this will give you, sorry, this is text. This will give you a list with all of these things. Like, you don't have to do all of this. Okay, with NumPy, you can just use something called load.txt. Okay, participants.csv. You can give the delimiter. In this case, the delimiter is a comma, right? And the data type is string. The default data type here is float. Obviously, that won't make any sense because our data is a string. So NumPy will give you an error saying we can't convert this to a string, please. We can't convert this to a float. Please give the data type to us so that we can figure out what to do. And if you do this, you get a NumPy array. And let's just call this data. So if we look at data.shape, you get you have 21 rows and 2 columns, and those 2 columns are in fact just the name and the email ID. So if you do something like this, you get just the names. If you do this, you get all the email IDs, right? Isn't that wonderful? So this makes IO very easy compared to with open file whatever, or even using a CSV reader like usual. And if you want to save something, so for example, if we want to save this data to something else, so let's say np.save txt, you give the participants copy or whatever .csv, and again you just give the array that you want to store, you give a delimiter, comma, and you give the format in which you wanted to store in. This basically tells it that you wanted to store it as a string, and yeah, if you this is basically it. So it'll save this as well, right? So input output becomes much easier. If you go to this, you will find out there's a lot more than load txt and save txt. So this is just for text files. There is also gen from text, which can handle missing values quite nicely. You can also just do a to file or to list or whatever. There's a lot of other ways to do it. One way in particular is this load and save. So it basically, this is similar to a pickle but safer. So if you want to save, so let's just open the save. So you have to give the file first. You can save this to participants, comma, data. Now, if you look at whatever you have here, you will see this. There is this participants .npy file, and this is basically a binary file. The reason that you would want to use this is especially for big arrays. If you write it into a text file, it takes a very long time to read and write. If you write it into something like this, it's much faster. So pretty much the same reasons why you would want to use pickles, but this is specific to NumPy, and you can save NumPy arrays quite easily with save. You can load it up again, participants.npy. It will give you the same data arrays earlier. Okay, so that was that. Linear algebra, I'll leave it to you guys to sort of look through it. One thing you can definitely see almost immediately if you scroll down a little bit is you can take the determinant of a matrix of a 2D array. Right? If it's a square 2D array, then you can take the determinant of it. You can solve a linear matrix equation. Okay, you can find the least square solution to a matrix equation. You can get the inverse of it, or a pseudo inverse of it, and so on. So there's a lot of linear algebra stuff that you can do. I won't really go into it much in detail because we are sort of over time right now, and I want to do string manipulation. So if you remember that, okay, I deleted that cell, so I'll go and take that back. So we remember this data that we imported, right? What do we really want to do here? So now there's this weird space around here which we don't really like. So let's just first off separate all these out. So we write name, comma, email equal data, and this won't work because it says too many values to unpack, and that is because it tries to unpack rows first. So there are like 21 rows and only 2 columns. So the easy way to do this is to just take the transpose, right? So now you have each column in a different variable in a different NumPy array. Now if you want to strip from this, right, strip the white space from the beginning and the end, if you just do strip, then it will tell you that NumPy has no attribute called strip, which makes sense. Strip is a string operation, right? I mean, why would a NumPy array have that? NumPy gives you string manipulation routines. So if you do np.char.strip email, then it will do this strip element wise for each element in this array, right? So which is great, but it doesn't end there. So you can do np.char.replace, right? You can give this at gmail.com, replace it with nothing, and it will give you the username. Isn't that great? Of course, if somebody were using Yahoo, then I mean this wouldn't work, right? So then you would have to use np.char.split, and you can still use that. You will do a split element wise, but this just gives you the username quite easily, and then you can do a for loop and write down all the names quite easily. So If you remember the tutorial one question, how long it took and how many lines it had at the end, using NumPy, you can just do it in like 3 lines. And you don't even need to do 3 lines because you can just do this much. Here you can give something called unpack equal true, and it will do the transpose for you. So really, I mean, there's nothing here. You already have the user immediately. You have the name. Great, isn't it? Last thing to show statistics. Obviously, there's a lot more stuff in string manipulation. You can go ahead and see it. You can do capitalize. You can do L strip, R strip. All sorts of stuff is here. Um, Pretty much everything that's available with normal string operations, you can get it element wise in NumPy. Statistics, again, you can get quantiles, you can get percentiles. If you know what they are, then you do. If you don't, look them up and just find out how awesome it is that NumPy gives you this functionality. Because if you want to implement this in something like C or C++, every time you want to take a quantile, you'll have to write a function in a program saying, first sort it and then find the middle and then find, too much work. And NumPy just gives it to you almost, for free like this. And then you can also take the median. You can take weighted averages, um, and the similar sort of thing for NaN compatible arrays as well. So if you have a NaN in the array, it'll ignore the array and do all the things that you want it to do, and so on. Yes, so I think that's more or less it. That was a speed run through NumPy. But if you are ever if you ever want to see what is there in NumPy, you can just go to the NumPy reference and you can just open any of these links and you'll see a lot of them. In particular, these routines. So array creation routines, we only saw a few of them, right? But there's a lot more. So you can create identity matrix of order n, right? You can make a matrix. You can make an array with all elements 0, all elements 1. All sorts of things are here. So go ahead. So apart from a range, there are other ways of getting numerical ranges as well. Linspace is particularly useful. Log space and geom space also useful, but a bit less used generally. Lots of things here. NumPy is full of things that will release you from writing for loops. So, you will almost never have to write for loops if you're using NumPy, if you're using it properly. Obviously, there are going to be cases where you have no option but to use a for loop, but this does a lot of stuff. You also get Fourier transforms, by the way. So if you are into that, yeah, go here. So I think that's more or less it. It covers a lot of stuff that I wanted to sort of cover. I think now, if not stopping, we can sort of discuss the questions from Safe. So what should we do? Safe or this? I'm more or less done. So yeah. Safe. Okay. So I'll have to go and get the questions from Safe. Safe quiz. Questions. Okay, so the first question. np.arange6.reshape. Yeah, great. So np.arange6.reshape 2,3. What happened there? 2,3 dot sum 0. Okay, so there's a lot of things happening here. So let's just split it up. So let's just call x equal to np.arange6. Okay, so now x.reshape 2,3 should basically give us 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's what it gives us. And if you want to take dot sum 0, remember, so let's call this y dot shape. Remember that sum 0 means that everything that this dimension will now be deleted. So it will sum like this over the first it will sum over the rows. So you will get 0 plus 3 is 3, 1 plus 4 is 5, 2 plus 5 is 7, and 357 is the answer here. Y dot sum 0 is 357. So you print it out. You get rid of these commas and this array thing, so it gives you something prettier. So that's the answer there. Yeah, this. So this is something I wanted to show as an example of a place where NumPy dot arange fails, and this is covered pretty decently in the documentation. So if you look at it, when using a non-integer step such as 0.1, results will often not be consistent. It is better to use numpy.linspace for these cases. And the reason that this happens is if you do 0.1, 6, not 1, what you expect is that it will go 0.12, 0.13, 0.14, 0.15 and then stop, because this final thing is exclusive, right? Just like in range. So if you have range 1, 3, it will go 1, 2 and then that's it. But what happens here is that it goes up to 0.16 and that's strange. Let's try changing this to 0.13. Now it behaves just as you expect. I mean 0.13, 0.14, 0.15, and this has to do with the with numerical precision and errors that come up due to that. So and this was discussed in the fractions thing as well. So if you see it there, then great. So if you do 0.16 minus 0.12, you get 0.0400000001. Okay, and if you divide that by the interval you are making, that will give you the number of elements in the list. Okay, that is 4. But unfortunately, the way NumPy does this is it takes the seal of this, which means that it makes it 5. That is why it has 5 elements in this. Whereas if you do 3, then it does it exactly as you expect it to. So yeah, so this is the reason why this sort of behaves unexpectedly, and this first is the answer. If you expected it to behave the proper way, then you would have gotten this. This is the thing that you should have thought of, and this as well. So you would have gotten 2 answers. So if you wrote this answer, it means that you have tried it on Jupyter. Nicely done. Okay, so the next one is this dot reshape thing, and again we've done this. So 12 dot reshape 3 comma 4 will give you 0 1 2 3 4 5. So I'll just show it, it's easier than. So np dot arange 12 dot reshape 3 comma 4. Yeah, so you want to print a. So yeah, so let's call this a minus 1 minus 2. So this will reverse the rows, right? And this will reverse the columns, but take every second column. So you will get, if you reverse the rows, you will get 8, 9, 10, 11, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0, 1, 2, 3. And if you reverse the columns, but take only the every second one, what you will get is 11, 9, 3, 1, I think. Oops, did I make a mistake here? I have to reshape this thing. Oh yeah, sorry. I took every second row as well. Start reshape 3 comma 4. Okay, great. So a of let's restart this. So this will reverse all of the rows. Great, and this will reverse every column one off. Great. Yeah. So yeah. So this will give you 11. Yeah, 11 9 7 5 3 1. Great. Okay. I got confused by it. I don't know what happened there. Okay, so it reverses the rows and then it takes every second column from backwards. So you get pretty much this. And I think the correct answer here that has been given is wrong. Why has that happened? I think this was a bug on our side. Yeah. I will fix this up later. Don't worry about it. Okay, the rest were just normal sort of questions. This one I'll see. I'll put this up on doubts as a thing. I think that was a mistake during making the question. So yeah. Explain the first question. Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, just we already mentioned this. So x equal to np dot arrange 6, right? So if you reshape it to 2 comma 3, you get this. And then if you print, if you sum it over the first axis, then the first axis is sort of gone. So you only have the second axis. So first axis is the rows. So you're summing all the everything row wise. So you get 0 plus 3, 1 plus 4, 2 plus 5. So you get 3, 5, 7. That's more or less it. Name comma email equal data dot t. Okay. np dot load txt participants dot csv delimiter equal comma d type equals string. Okay. So you have data. Data is a two-dimensional array. Now, if you want to, let's take a smaller example. Let's take np dot array 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so if you take, oh no, this is square, so it doesn't work. 0, 1, minus 1, 2, 3, minus 2. Great. So if you try row 1, row 2 equal A, then it unpacks each row. So you get row 1 and then you get row 2. But what we want here is not that. We want each column, right? So if you want column 1, column 2, column 3 in A, and we try to do it, it will just tell you that you expected 3, but you only got 2 because it's trying to unpack it row wise. So if you do a transpose, right, then it will basically interchange the number of rows and number of columns. So it will just take it 3 comma 2, and you can see what is happening here. So you get 0, 1, minus 1, 2, 3, minus 2. And then if you want to take the columns, you can take each column separately like this. So you get 0 comma 2, the second column is 1 comma 3, and the third column is minus 1, minus 2. And that's basically what we are doing here. So we are saying that the column 1 is name, column 2 is email, and we are taking the transpose. Lot capital T is just a short form or shortcut or whatever you want to call it for the transpose. So you get name like this, and then you get email. And then you can do all sorts of string operations on this that you require. All right, cool. Sum 0 axis equal 1. No, sum 0 is summing over the first axis. So it is summing over axis equal to 0. And axis equal to 0 will sum it up. Okay, so you have to sort of understand what you mean by row wise and column wise. What I mean by row wise is it takes each row and then sums it downwards. So if you take 0, 2, 1, 3, minus 1, minus 2, if that is what you mean, then yes, that is what it does. So, but if you mean row wise to mean for each row, I will sum all the elements in that row, then no, it's the other way around. So, so that's why I said instead of thinking of it as row wise and column wise, just think of it as one of these shapes or disappearing. That will sort of make it a little easier to think about it. Yeah. Once you're used to it, this sort of confusion more or less becomes less bad. But of course, it can come up at some points. So, yeah, think of it in terms of what it's doing to the shape. Okay, I think that's I think we should stop here. I'll put up some notes, and in the notes I'll put up some of the interesting functions and routines in these libraries and some more libraries maybe. And you can just have a look at them. But of course, keep in mind that shouldn't immediately start memorizing everything. Can we read multiple CSV file in a folder? Well, for one thing, you can use a for loop, which will make it easy. Is that what you sort of mean? You'll have to take it into different arrays, but then you can, if all the columns are the same, then Yeah, you can use a. Yeah. If you want to use NumPy to do it, for example, there are two CSV here now. Um, so you need to know the file names. So the file names are participants.csv and participants copy.csv for files, for file in files, data equal np dot load txt file, delimiter equal dtype equal str. So yeah, I mean you can have it as a dictionary, for example, data of file equal this, and then you have data of participants dot csv is this, and data of participants copy dot csv will be, yeah, I mean it's the same thing, but yeah, you get the point. However you want to do it, you can do it with this for loop. Yeah. I'll give you a bit of a hint, because if you don't have access to this, right, and you just want every CSV in this thing, one thing you can do is use this module called glob. I'll just show you the syntax. Okay, you can look it up later. You can find out what glob is. What it does is it gives you the list of all the file names, all the files where the file name matches some pattern. We haven't done regex or anything yet, which is why I didn't want to say this in the beginning, but I mean might as well. So if you do files equal this, then yeah, you get the same thing. You don't need, now you don't have any variables where it's sort of global variables where you have to manually define all the files in the folder. But yeah, I mean depending on your use case, this may or may not be useful. Cool. So I think I'll stop sharing screen. If there are any doubts or anything that you want to know if you can do it with NumPy or not, or how to do it, you can ask up now, I guess, if you want. Can we make everybody able to unmute or something, Aryan?
I'll check, but if somebody can just raise their hand, I'll just unmute them.
Yeah. If you have anything to ask, you can go ahead. Otherwise, we are basically done for today.
Thanks for sticking around, by the way.
Yeah.
I'll stop the recording.
All right.